Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to bringing you scary stories. As always, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot and helps me keep creating this content. Alright, here's the stories. It's actually been really hard getting around to tell this story. For a long time, reading true scary stories online or listening to them on YouTube, I often wondered why anyone would tell the story of something tragic that happened to them that others would look at as entertainment. But I finally decided to tell it because I realized it's not just about entertainment, but it's also a way of helping people who might find themselves in similar situations. My story took place about 10 years ago. My friend Jake and I grew up together. We were best friends for as long as I can remember. We always sat by each other at school and we hanged out during recess. We played video games together almost every night. We were very, very close. We decided to even go to the same college together. I thought Jake could have gotten to a much better school than me, but like me, he wanted us to have the experience together. When the time came for us to leave for college, we left a few days before we had to, so we could be there a few days early. We gave ourselves 3 days worth of driving to get there. Now, neither Jake nor me had ever driven that long of a distance before, so it was quite an adventure. We thought it'd be cool to see some of the countryside before having to buckle down and study. The second day we were driving through the mountains. It was a new experience too because neither of us had ever done it. I think I felt sick a lot of the time and it likely had to do something with the elevation. However, towards the end of the day, something went wrong with the car. It was driving and then suddenly seized up. I had trouble even getting it off the road. Jake and I couldn't figure out what to do with the car. It was beyond our expertise. We were also in a bad area as far as cell phone signals were concerned. We didn't know how far away we were from a gas station either. So we decided that one of us would hitchhike to the gas station and get some help. All of our belongings were in the car and in the trailer to the car, so one of us had to stick with the car. Jake decided that he would be the one to go and find help. It took a little while before a car picked him up. By that point, there wasn't much sunlight left, so as I sat in the driver's seat and waited, the sun went down. A state trooper at one point pulled up to the car and I had a chat with him. I let him know what was going on and that my friend had hitchhiked to find some help. He took some information and said he would drive to the gas station to see if my friend had gotten there. Apparently, about 30 miles away was a gas station with a garage, and they could have our car towed for us. The officer asked how long I had been waiting, and I let him know at that point that it had been over 3 hours. This would have been enough time for the car with my friend to go to the gas station, get the tow truck, and be back 3 times over. When the officer left, I was concerned. When the officer was gone for a while, I was even more concerned. It was dark out, and this is the first time I felt truly alone. It was an odd, unpleasant, eerie feeling. But I also sort of felt that I didn't want the officer to come back because somehow I knew it would be bad news. It was nearly 2 hours later that the officer came back. He had the tow truck with him, and I was relieved. I was sure that Jake was with them. However, when the officer came to my car, Jake wasn't with him. He informed me that no one had stopped at the gas station to get a tow. He also checked to see if anyone had seen the car with Jake in it, and no one was able to pull it up from memory. The car was towed, and while it was being worked on, I had to go to the police station and file a report. They had to call Jake's parents and let them know that he was missing. I got a motel room in the area. I put off the trip because I was worried about my friend. I spent 4 days in that motel, freaked out and worried that I would never see my friend Jake again. Finally, the police came to talk to me again. The car that Jake had gotten a ride in was found in a nearby grocery store parking lot. Jake was in the trunk. He was naked, beaten, bloody, and unconscious, but he was still alive. He was in a coma for about a month before he gained consciousness again. And even after that, it was weeks before he was able to recognize me, or anyone else for that matter. And even longer before he was able to recall what had happened to him. I don't want to go into much detail, but the people that had picked him up were driving a stolen car. They robbed him of his money and credit cards and cell phone. It was actually due to the credit cards that they were eventually caught. There were 2 men and one of them is still in jail. I didn't go to college that year, but I'm happy to tell you the following autumn Jake and I finally made it to college. This time, however, we flew and his parents came with us. We spent all 4 years roomed together and we're still best friends to this day. Hitchhiking for any reason is a really bad idea. If Jake had waited, the officer would eventually come up to us and this would have never had to happen. One of the most profound moments of my life came on my way to college for the first time. I was only 18 years old and I was leaving home for the first time in my life. I had been on the college grounds once before, but it was with my parents. I left on a drive across the country in an old car by myself for the first time ever. I have to admit, both being excited and terrified, more than I had been in my life up to that point. About 2/3 of the way through the trip, I was traveling through the mountainous region. I'm not comfortable explaining where it is, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. But going through the area, I ran through a bit of car trouble. I was far enough from any town or exit that I was going to chance walking. So I was worried about exactly what would happen. My cell phone didn't get any sort of signal, so I wasn't able to call for help. However, a small pickup truck pulled over and two guys a bit older than me got out and helped me. After about an hour of fiddling around with my car, I call it fiddling because I honestly don't understand what they were doing, they fixed my car. I offered to pay them for it, but they refused to accept anything. They just asked me to pay it forward. I assured them that I would, and honestly I fully intended to, but making a promise when you're in the situation isn't really as easy as keeping it when you're not. A full 2 years of college went by, and I could honestly say that I didn't do anything that I might consider a repayment of the good deed. In fact, I largely forgot about it. I was driving home for Thanksgiving in the fall of my junior year of college. This, of course, took me right back to the same mountainous area. Driving through a rather lonely stretch of road, I noticed something in the distance, on the right side of the road. A car had been pulled over and someone had the hood up, working on it. Immediately, I remembered the experience from 2 years earlier. I remembered how grateful I was to the two men who had helped me out. I also remembered my agreement to pay it forward. So, of course, realizing that it had been 2 years and I hadn't paid the favor back, I imagined how I would feel about doing it. Still with the thought I can't decide right away, I was going downhill on the road, and the car was on the uphill side, right before I was to hit a tunnel. I probably changed my mind back and forth before I ultimately decided to stop the car and help, and the decision was only made seconds before I actually stopped the car. Rather than wait for me to get out of the car, the man immediately came from under the hood and started walking towards my passenger door. I found this odd as I hadn't offered him a ride. I was going to since I didn't have the ability to work on his car for him, but it was just strange that he would automatically assume this. However, I still remember that I was trying to do a good deed here, so I unlocked the passenger side door. As the man approached the door and was about to lift the door handle, I noticed some movement from the back of his truck. It looked to me like a second person crouched down had moved from the back of the truck to the back of my car. I wasn't completely sure, but it was enough to make me react and quickly lock the passenger side door right before the man pulled up on the handle. The first man hadn't expected to pull up on a locked handle, I guess, and he actually stumbled a bit back. I noticed that he had a gun in the waistband of his pants. The man behind my car had obviously expected the door to open, and he had quickly moved over to the driver's side door, which I had locked just a moment before. He had a knife in his right hand. I saw the first man reach for his gun, but not before I hit the gas and took off past these men and into the tunnel. I watched back for as long as I could, and I didn't see them get into their car, but I still expected them to follow me into the tunnel. Give me chase. But they never came after me. All I can think of is that they were scared of being caught, whatever the hell they were up to, and then turned and left in the other direction. I guess maybe I was a bit too literal in my promise. I was simply asked to repay a good deed by paying it forward. I thought that this meant helping someone whose car was broken down. This almost got me hurt and maybe even killed. When I got back to school, I volunteered at a soup kitchen for the rest of the year. I was able to do a good deed, which was in fact not life-threatening in any way. This happened back when I was a teenager. My best friend had turned 16 and his parents went and bought him a car. Well, once that happened, we were always out driving somewhere. If you had a car around when you were that age, you understand what I mean. Once you get the taste of that sort of freedom, it's like a drug. You have to take it all the time. So this happened to us on a weekend night. We had gone and grabbed a bite to eat. Neither of us really felt like going home yet. We lived in a suburban area and we weren't really supposed to drive too far away. We were also not supposed to drive on the freeway either. However, we were bored teenagers and we figured out that there was no way our parents would figure out what we had done, so we got on the freeway and decided to take it to the city. Our inexperience caused us to make a really big mistake, though. We drove into the city on the interstate. We spent a little bit of time there, and on the way back, unbeknownst to us at the time, we were on the wrong interstate. We kept expecting to get into the area we lived, but the further and further we drove, we came to the conclusion that we must have gotten on the wrong road. After discussing it a little bit, we decided to take the next exit and try to find a gas station or something to ask for directions to get us back to the right area. So without thinking, to look and see if there was a sign for a gas station at the next exit, we just took the exit. There were no businesses right at the beginning of the exit, but we didn't want to get back on the interstate, so we drove down the road trying to find somewhere. I can't tell you how long we were driving on that road. We came across a few houses here and there. There were all some small stores and small diners, but it was late and they were all closed. We all started to panic, not really sure what we needed to do. We eventually decided the best thing we'd do would just be to turn around, drive back to the interstate, and find an exit with a gas station, and hope we made it without running out of gas. So we turned on the next road, which was a very thin road. We figured we would get to the first driveway and then turn around in that. I tried to tell my friend just to do a U-turn in the middle of the road, but he didn't want to do that. So our situation, which was bad in the beginning, just kept getting worse as we got farther and farther away from civilization. The road was dark, thin, and it didn't appear to have any driveways on it. We were both pretty tense and scared at this point. It was then that we saw something ahead of us. There were two guys walking towards us on the side of the road. We thought this would be good, and we'd be able to ask them if there was a place to turn around soon. However, they froze when they saw us, and then after a moment ran off the side of the roads into the woods. We were confused, but we thought there was many reasons for this. We just kept driving. We very soon saw an old pickup truck laying on the ditch by the side of the road. We drove by it, and when I saw it, my chest tightened up a bit. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat. However, the person was not moving, and their head was lolled back. There looked to be blood on the door of the truck. We passed it and eventually came to a driveway. We used it to turn around and drive back. When the truck on the side of the road came into the view for the second time, we noticed that two men who had run into the woods were at the truck now. They saw us once again, but this time they ran off a lot quicker. We drove up to the truck, and it was more obvious this time that whoever was in the driver's seat was dead. This time, the truck was on my friend's side of the car. When he noticed it, he just hit the gas and drove away as quickly as he could. We got off the road, took the next road, and drove back to the interstate. The next exit had a gas station. We went there and asked the attendant to call the police. The police had to call our parents, and we got chewed out big time for having driven so far away. And the man in the truck was indeed dead. And it wasn't a car wreck. He was stabbed several times in the chest. And we had no doubt that the men who killed him were the guys who ran twice away from us when they saw us coming. Even though the guys fled both times, it was still terrifying to think that they were so close to us on that thin, poorly lit road. I also wondered if they lived in the driveway we came across, but I don't really know. All we know is that a wrong turn can lead you somewhere you really, really never want to go. Thank you for listening. As always, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Have a good night.